All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at the absolute roller coaster history of Nauru, the world's third smallest country. We're going to unpack a really fascinating, but honestly pretty sobering case study of what economists call the resource curse. It's this wild story of unimaginable wealth, intense geopolitical maneuvering, and, well, total environmental devastation. And the crazy part? It all takes place on a tiny little speck of land right in the middle of the vast South Pacific Ocean. So here's the big question we really need to figure out. How exactly does a nation mine itself out of existence? Like, how does a pristine island paradise just transform into a hollowed-out landscape on the brink of bankruptcy? To figure that out, we have to trace Nauru's timeline and see exactly how the very thing that made them rich became their ultimate undoing.
Section 1. The Pleasant Island.
Okay, picture this. A nation that is literally smaller than most city airports. We're talking just 21 square kilometers. But for centuries, this tiny space supported a thriving Paleolithic culture. They had an elaborate agricultural system, stone barriers, wells, the whole shebang. When British whalers first spotted this pristine coral atoll back in 1798, the captain, John Fearn, was so struck by it that he actually named it Pleasant Island. He noted that the people there lived in this really orderly, peaceful way. It was just a lush, communal, completely self-sustaining society.
Section 2. The Phosphate Discovery and Colonial Scramble.
So, what disrupted this paradise? Phosphate. Or, to put it a bit less delicately, centuries of fossilized bird poop reacting with the island's limestone. But it turns out this stuff was a world-class agricultural fertilizer. And once foreign powers realized the immense value that was quite literally covering the ground the Nauruans were walking on, man, everything changed overnight. The communal land of Pleasant Island suddenly had this massive global price tag attached to it. From there, the Nauruan people got caught in this dizzying geopolitical whiplash. They were essentially passed around between empires, strictly so these foreign powers could exploit their resources. First, it was a German protectorate in 1888. Then, after World War I, it became a League of Nations mandate run by the British and Australians. Then came a really brutal Japanese occupation during World War II, where a lot of the population was deported or faced horrific treatment. Finally, it became a UN trusteeship in 1947. And through all of this, all these handoffs, the Nauruans had almost zero say as their island's topsoil was just scooped up and shipped away to fertilize farms all over the globe. Section 3. Independence and Riches. Now fast forward to the 1960s, and the scale of this mining operation was just astronomical. Nauru was turning out a staggering 23 million tons of phosphate a year. I mean, just try to wrap your head around that kind of volume coming from an island of only 21 square kilometers. The Australian, New Zealand, and British commissioners were pulling massive wealth out of the ground. But the tide was finally starting to turn, and this incredible output was about to propel the newly independent republic to a level of per capita wealth you wouldn't even believe. In 1968, led by the charismatic Hammer de Robert, Nauru officially won its independence. And a few decades later, when they finally took control of the Nauru Phosphate Commission, it kicked off an era where the Nauruan people could actually reap the financial benefits of their own land. By 1989, they formed the Nauru Phosphate Royalties Trust. Nauruans finally had total control. The government set up massive offshore bank accounts, they were buying international real estate, and for a brief, shining moment, Nauruans were literally among the wealthiest people per capita on the entire planet. They had lavish government spending, completely free healthcare, free education. It was a totally different world. Section 4. The Resource Curse. But wait, what happened to all that money? Well, the contrast is pretty stark. On one hand, they had hundreds of millions of dollars sitting in offshore trust funds, but on the other hand, a mix of rigid conservatism, foreign mismanagement, and just entirely opaque financial records completely wiped it out. Politicians started chasing these really risky schemes, investments were totally bungled by foreign advisors, and eventually these massive funds were whittled down to a relative pittance. It sent the entire nation sliding straight into receivership and near total bankruptcy. And the physical toll? Honestly, it was just as catastrophic as the financial one. See, originally, there were an estimated 200 million tons of phosphate on the island, but today, it's facing near total exhaustion. The island was literally hollowed out from the inside. 4/5 of the entire landmass was mined, and instead of a lush paradise, they were left with this devastated barren limestone terrain that's just covered in deep sinkholes. The very ground they lived on was sacrificed for a temporary burst of wealth. Section 5. Surviving the 21st Century.
So, with their environment trashed and their bank accounts empty, Nauru had to get creative to survive. They leveraged their sovereignty in this brilliant, if a bit desperate, divide and conquer strategy. Basically, they started playing major world powers against each other to secure vital lifelines. For instance, they got into this diplomatic tug of war, officially switching their diplomatic recognition back and forth between China and Taiwan. Why? Specifically to lure economic support and infrastructure aid from whichever side was willing to write the bigger check. At the same time, they partnered with Australia, agreeing to host a highly controversial refugee transit center on the island in exchange for essential financial assistance. And honestly, that deal is pretty much what keeps their economy afloat today.
Now, there's a really profound irony when you look at Nauru's modern energy situation. On the global stage, they are super vocal champions for climate action. They're out there warning the UN about the existential threats to small island states. But domestically, they're still heavily dependent on imported diesel fuel to run their generators. And the reason why is just wild. Because the tiny island was so extensively mined, it's now covered in these jagged limestone pinnacles. They literally just lack the physical flat space required to build large-scale alternative energy projects like solar arrays. And adding to those permanent scars from the mining, they are now facing a massive existential threat from the ocean itself. Nauru's highest point, Command Ridge, is only 71 meters above sea level. Projections for the year 2100 show we could see up to a meter of sea level rise. If that happens, half of their habitable land goes underwater. We are talking about 90% of the population being forced out of their homes. Plus, and this might be the most immediate danger, the creeping seawater risks contaminating the underground freshwater lens. That would completely wipe out their drinking water.
But here's the thing. Despite the total devastation of their land, the Nauruan people possess this absolutely incredible resilience. As our sources point out, they still strongly believe in their right to mineral richness and in their ongoing struggles for economic independence and cultural identity. They maintain a distinct Micronesian culture, and they are fiercely protective of their language, their traditional music, and who they are as a people. They haven't given up, not even close. They're still actively navigating the global stage, fighting for survival and relevance, even after being dealt one of the most uniquely challenging hands in modern history.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. Consider how the world's smallest republics navigate survival when their defining resource becomes their ultimate curse. Can a nation successfully reinvent itself after quite literally shipping its own foundation overseas? It's a profound question about sustainability, about governance, and about human resilience. And frankly, it's a question that extends far beyond the shores of Pleasant Island.